It's not that you just want to kill yourself. It's that you have a problem. Your life is horrifying because you're isolated. But in order to break that isolation, it brings up death threats in your mind. And so I think that's a lot of the torture that people are going through. And again, I don't want to over caveat this, but this is just my opinion. I've certainly had some conversations along these lines. And that would be my first port of call if I was talking to someone about this, just sort of in my personal life. But that would be my first approach, if that makes sense.
Yes, sir. So I would like to give Mr. Molyneux a break and just share some thoughts on Kamala Harris finally extended the webpage that she has and now actually lists the issues that she would like to talk about. Now, I'm not going to get into the specifics, but here are the major takeaways to save the audience some time. Voluntary contracts are exploitative, but the state imposing unilateral obligations on millions of people by legal fiat is a totally valid social contract. Forced cotton picking is inherently immoral, but forced military conscription for Vladimir Zelensky is totally good. We want to empower the working class, but school choice should be illegal. You might owe reparations for something you never engaged in, but violent criminals today are really just victims of past injustice. Riots are the voice of the unheard, but January 6th was the worst thing since the 30 Years' War. So, when you are faced with all of these contradictions, the best thing that I think people could do is check out two websites. One is libertarianinstitute.org. Two is freedomain.com. I want to give 10 lessons I have learned from freedomain.com, along with these books, On Truth, The Tyranny of Illusion, Everyday Anarchy, and Practical Anarchy. So, lesson number 1, the importance of free association, disassociation, and having your own standards. This applies to friends, family, commercial interactions, and politics. Freedomain really gave me the confidence to not have double standards, whether it's for my neighbor or for someone like Lindsey Graham. Number 2, taking the implications of arguments. I had this pink-haired Bolshevik the other day tell me, "You shouldn't tell people what to do." And I had to just pause and laugh, asking her, "Did you just tell me not to do something in the form of telling me to tell other people not what to do and what not to do?" Having this confidence really allowed me to discuss political issues without a heightened sense of insecurity. Number 3, start small with what you can control. One of my favorite Molyneux rants ever was, he goes, "If you can't lift a cup of coffee, please don't pretend to tell me that you can lift a building." So starting with something small that which is in your control is really important. The other really good one he had was, before you try and change the world or change the political system and turn it against its own interests, could you take a Jane Austen book club and turn that book club against Jane Austen? Start small, start local. The next one, use precise language. Nikki Haley said the other day, "I don't agree with the president on everything." Well, of course, no one agrees with everyone on everything. This was something Mr. Molyneux would constantly point out to us. And once you see the imprecise language that morons use to arouse the passions of the feeble-minded and keep them asleep, it's just everywhere. Next one, holding people accountable to their face. There was a guy, remotely, but in a conversation. The gentleman was asked by Mr. Molyneux, at this point, what would it take for you to break up with your girlfriend? He goes, "Well, if she ever really violated my trust." To which Stefan said, "Well, she cheated on you and gave you an STD. So are you going to break up with her or just move the goalpost?" And it was like, oh, I never thought of someone actually, holding someone accountable like that. This is something I'd only say a day later to someone else in the confidence of my own home. That is really important. Next, the importance of analogies. Isolating variables, allowing people to extract a principle under circumstances which they don't have emotional connections to. This is why I use the example of the Catholic Church doing everything the state does in my book, Domestic Imperialism. Very important. Next, the importance of social ostracism and public declarations of disapproval. it was just amazing hearing adults that I know say things like, well, you can't say X. When you say you can't, do you mean the words don't actually exit your mouth? And they're like, well, you'll get a lot of eye rolls and people might raise their voice. And so that's what I mean by can't. So they put this on the same level as like, you can't flap your arms and fly, and you can't address issues like, hey, you shouldn't hit your kids, to one of your friends who is an abusive parent. Next, the against me argument. Raising the emotional opportunity cost of holding an immoral belief decreases the person's confidence in it. Thus, they're less likely to passionately spread it, decreasing its power of social proof. This against me argument is very important. It gets people out of the realm of hypothetically, theoretically, I think things like taxation and conscription are okay. Asking people, you want me to be enslaved, forced labor, to go to Ukraine, to keep Zelensky on the throne? That's what you think should happen, and I should be caged for not doing this? If I like Yanukovych more, that's what should happen to me? You're advocating that? Very powerful stuff. Next, selective anger as a litmus test. Growing up, I thought there were two types of people who got angry and people who didn't. Freedomain.com really taught me that there was actually a standard that you should have for things that should make you angry and things that you should first talk through or just constantly remain calm on. So the ability to properly discriminate a good time for when anger should be used. Because if you use it all the time, it's like inflation. If you print a ton of it, then it's worthless. If you're always angry, then you never know what's really important. Finally, I had to choose one of my favorite quotes. This one might be the best. Death is coming either way. Living small ain't gonna save you from death. It just makes every day a little more like dying. That is a number of lessons I've learned as a student of Mr. Molyneux for these years. Been waiting maybe 6 years or so to tell him that.